All right, good morning, everybody. This is another video about Swift basic basics language. All right, in this video, I'm going to learn a couple new things do not exist in other programming languages, which are the concept of tuples and the concept of optional variables. We'll start with tuples first, and then we'll talk about optional variables. What is a tuple? Basically, it's a group of values together. You can group them in a quick way. You don't have to create objects. You don't have to create like structures if you know C. So it goes like this. You can start with let my tuple, and let, if you remember, this is a constant, right? So you can, and then you can put values, whatever value you want. So you can put 4, you can put double, you can put string, okay. Now this value, this variable does not have only one value. It has a group of values, such a, so the first one is 4, and second is 4.0. Let's take that, so different values. So 5 double float, and then you have a string value. Now the way you access these, you can just say print first value is, and then you can say slash, and then you put the bracket, and this is just like an array or any group. It has an index, so you can use the index element so for this, and then you can see this here. So this is the first element has an index of 0, second element has an index of 1, and third element has an index of 2. So you can say my tuple, and then you put, let's say 2, okay, and then that will print a string, okay. So the first value is, no, we want to say the first value, so that we're going to put 0 here, okay. So this is how you define a basic tuple, okay. Now you can get those values also. You don't have to print them, so you can say let float value, which is the second one, right? F value, and then you can say equal to, or double, let's call it double value, equal to tuple, my tuple dot 1, which is the second one, okay. So that will give you 5, and so on. You can actually give them a name. Okay, you can give name to these values, or you can get values for all of them at the same time. So you don't have to specify it like this. So you can say, I want to get all the values. So you can say let v1, comma v2, comma v3, just for simplicity, equal, and then you can get you can just say my tuple here. And what happens? Value 1 will be assigned to the first element. So this is value 1. You'll see the output here, 4. Then you can put value 2, and then you put value 3, and you see all the 3 elements. Okay. So this is a quick way also to assign the values in the tuple to the different variables. All right. Another option is that you can actually, instead of using the index, is that you can give them names. So you can say let what do you want to call it? Let's call another, right? Cust info, for example, equal. And then you can decide, here you can decide to give it, I want to put cust ID, for example, cust ID, and then I can give it a value, okay. And let's say 20, comma, cust name, or just cust name, and then you can give it customer 1, first bank, or yeah, first bank, and then you can create another one. You say, for example, balance, current balance, cust balance, and then you put some values here. Okay. We can get an error here. We have to might close Xcode. When we start getting this error, you have to close Xcode and then get it back on. All right, so this is, all right. So let me save this and then we'll have to close Xcode and then open it again, okay. Quit Xcode and then let's open it again. All right. And then I'll share the screen again. All right. Make sure we're recording. We're recording. Okay, so that's how we do tuples. Now notice what happens here. I can access cust info by actually those names. So I can say cust balance if I want. You get the balance. Cust ID, cust info.cust ID, and then you can get the balance. Okay, they get the ID. So this is another way to define tuples. Now it depends on how you use them. I mean, sometimes you define, like you see a lot, like when you if you have a point on the screen, so it has an x and y. Okay, so a point could be x and y values. Okay, or so that's it for the tuples. Now, optional variables are new concepts in programming languages, and they are, if you haven't used them before, they're kind of tricky to get to around them. So what do you do? Let's call this as optional variables. What it is, basically, anytime you define an object or a variable that can have a value or nil, you define it as an optional variable. The way you do it, the reason you're doing this, so you can protect your code from crashing when you have nil values. So you know that I need to test for nil values when you define those variables. So how do you define optional variables? So if you say var city, and in the past you can just say string, for example, and that would work. But if you want to say it's an optional, so you put a question mark. So you're indicating this is an optional variable. It can have a nil or it can have a value. So what do you do before you access this? You need to check, does it have a value or not? And the way this is, you used to do that in Objective-C before you use an object, use an object. So you can say here if city does not equal to nil, that means it has a value. And then you can do something here, do something. Okay, else, usually you print or some sort of an error or a message, or you do something else. Okay, so you say else, do something else. Okay, this is the basics of it. Now let's say we want to actually define an optional variable and actually use it in the code. So we're going to create another one. Now, optional variables are not only restricted to objects, strings and things like that. It could be just an integer or a double, or so you can do the same thing with an int. So we can say int or var int temp, we're going to call for short for temperature, and you can say int and optional. Here you can say if temp does not equal to nil, then we want to do something, right, with the temperature. Else, we're going to say invalid temperature. Print line temperature has no value. Okay. All right. Now here, how do I get the value? Because this is an optional variable, there's a concept called unwrapping the value. I want to unwrap the value to get access to the actual value. So how do you do this? You can say if temp, now I need to get to check the value. So I use this exclamation mark, and this tells the compiler or that I want to actually access the value. So this is how you unwrap the value. So this is a concept, again, this is a new concept, but if you're using optional variable and you want to use the value, you need to unwrap the value. There's another way I'm going to teach you a little later that kind of like a shortcut. So how do you do this? You can say, now you can test if the temperature is greater than 25, 30 Celsius, and then you can say print line, the weather is hot. Is hot. Okay. Else, you can say maybe the weather is cool or cold, whatever. Maybe cool. Just, of course, you can have more checks, but just for simplicity, we'll just say the weather is cool. Else, the weather is cool. Okay. So you define an optional variable, then you check if it is not nil, you do something with that value. Otherwise, you can print an error message or do something else. And when you want to access the value, you will have to unwrap it using the exclamation mark. Okay. Now, as I said, you can do it in an easier manner. And this manner, it's a kind of trick. You assign the optional variable to like a temporary variable, and then you can use that temporary variable. Okay, so you don't need to check if it is nil or not nil. So all you do, you can say if let t equal temp. Okay. And then here, you can do the same thing that we've done before, okay? But I don't need to unwrap it. I can just use that t value, okay? Let's put that here first, Command copy, then Command V. And here, we're gonna take this, Command copy, and then Command V. And instead of using the temperature, now we use just simply T. All right. So you don't have to unwrap it. This is a trick you use. You assign the optional variable to a constant, temporary constant, and then you use this contemporary constant in your code. All right. Now we haven't, all of them has no values. So let's put some values here. So you can say, if you say temp, I have, let's say it's equal to 25. Okay, so then you should get the weather is cool. All right, same thing here. You should get the weather is cool. All right, if you change it to a different value, temp equal 30, and then you can say 31. It should say the weather is hot. All right. So that's it for tuples and temporary variables. No, conditional variables. So how just to summarize, this is how you define your tuples. And you can just a basic tuple, then you can access them using the index element or the index number of each of those elements, and then it goes from 0 to 1 to 2. And this is how you get their values. You can assign names to these variables. So you can say to these values, for example, customer ID, customer name, and then you give them values. And one thing I didn't show you here, you can actually you can change the tuple by giving it a value. For example, you can say customer ID, cust ID equal 40 now. Okay. Now the tuple will change maybe not. Why is because it is a constant. You notice it is constant. So, but if I make it a var, I should be able to change the tuple for. It'll actually change this to 40. Okay. All right. So that's for the tuples. And now to see the change actually take an effect, if you just do cust info here, you'll see that the tuple has 40 here. So not only you can get the values, but you can change them. All right, and then this is for the tuples. Now, optional variables, in summary, in a simple terms, anytime you have a variable that can be a nil or not, then you define it as optional variable. Now, label, you'll see that if you will later on use Xcode, a lot of the UI elements are defined as optional. Okay, so you define it as an optional variable, and then before you use it, you check if it is nil or not. This is the simplest way of doing it. And then here's an example of how you do it. You check, you define an optional variable. It could be an integer. And then if it is not nil, we have to unwrap the variable. Okay, we unwrap the variable so we can get the actual value. All right, and we do something with that value. Another way to do that, you assign it to a temporary variable. And this temporary variable, if it is nil, you will get actually the value, and then you can use it in that. You use that temporary variable in your code. Otherwise, if it has no value, it will go to the else, and then you cannot. It doesn't do anything. All right. I hope that this will help you with your understanding of those two new elements in programming languages.